Hello, Virginia Lacrosse Network. I am Wyatt Christopher. I'm a graduate of the 2012 men's lacrosse program at the University of Virginia. I'm a member of the 2011 National Championship team. I am the director of the Virginia Lacrosse Network, and now the host of the Virginia Lacrosse Network Podcast. We are so excited to launch this podcast in our continued efforts to bring together this amazing group of alumni to learn about where they are, what they're doing, and the lessons they've learned through the game of lacrosse. We have a great group of alumni that we're going to be interviewing on a monthly basis, so we're excited for you to learn, tune in, and as always, go Who's and Wah Who Wah. Chris Rotelli, welcome to the Virginia Lacrosse Network Podcast. How are we doing today?
All right. Thank you, Wyatt. Doing very well. Happy to be on. It's an honor.
Yeah, I was just saying you're the third official guest of the Virginia Lacrosse Network Podcast. We started with Coach Starja, which was as good as it gets for me, and then Coach Myers a few weeks ago, catching up with her and everything she's doing with One Love, and now we have you, the great Chris Rotelli. So thanks for jumping on and everything you have and continue to do for Virginia Lacrosse and the game of lacrosse. You're a huge advocate for this game and everything. It's all the good in the game. So I'm grateful to be spending time with you, and you've always been so good to me, and it's really cool to continue our relationship in this forum. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Wyatt. I really appreciate that. Those are big shoes to follow with Dom and Julie, but I'm pumped to talk Virginia lacrosse. It's been such a big part of my life, and so much of what I do today comes directly from Virginia lacrosse program and people like Coach Starja. So happy and excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So catch us up. You're always doing a lot with lacrosse and just looking at where you are. You're California advanced. I think you're coaching high school. Just have a lot of great moving pieces, I think, in the lacrosse world. So would love to hear just kind of what's keeping you busy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll give you the quick story. I graduated UVA in 2003, moved back to New England briefly, was playing professional lacrosse, and I was working for Cascade Helmets. And at that time, Cascade had 98% market share in lacrosse helmets. And I wanted to move to San Diego, and Tillman Johnson and a couple other people. I just taken jobs for Warrior and Brine as their Western sales reps, and Cascade never had a Western employee before. So I told my boss, Tim Ellsworth, I said, I got a great idea for you. I'll move to California and I'll be your
Hmm.
Western rep and your first employee out there. And he said, Chris, we already sell every lacrosse helmet. I'm not sure you living in San Diego will sell more helmets, but I'll make a deal with you. And if you can create more lacrosse players, we will sell more helmets. So you can move to California, you can be our Western sales rep, but I want part of your job to be that of a game grower. And as you travel around the West and you meet with the lacrosse stores that sell our helmets, I want you to also meet with people that are running lacrosse camps and creating lacrosse in these new markets, because lacrosse this was 2004 now, was really
Yeah.
just starting to grow in California. And that's kind of how I got started in what I do today. And the MLL ended up expanding to California in 2006, and I was playing for the Boston Cannons at the time, commuting back and forth for lacrosse in the summer. So I asked to be traded, and I essentially got traded to the San Francisco Dragons, and I moved to San Francisco in 2006 to play on the Dragons, and I was still working for Cascade. And I've now been here 20 years. That was
Mhm.
that was almost 20 years ago. So I was always sort of working. I stayed in lacrosse ever since I graduated UVA, and
Yep.
it was always something I just loved to be a part of. Even when I was at Virginia, I wasn't going to get like Wall Street internships in the summertime. I was going to work at lacrosse camps, and I just something about coaching and being on a lacrosse field and being around the
Yep.
game I've just always loved. And so throughout my life out here in California, I was always sort of running lacrosse camps and coaching really part-time. And then around 2012, when I started advanced lacrosse, I started doing it full time. And so now today we do, camps and travel teams and tournaments and are in like 15 cities around the way in the West, in the South primarily. And I'm also the head coach at Sacred Heart Prep. And I've been
Yep.
there 11 years. And so the combination of being able to coach and, own and sort of, grow my own business is
Yep.
been really fun and something I love doing. And it's all comes back to Virginia and people like Dom and Coach Van and Tucker and Colbeck, people that like really taught me everything about the game. So
Yep.
I owe a lot of what I do today to Virginia Lacrosse.
Yeah, yeah. And so let me have you take us back one more journey, and I want to hear kind of your origin story to get from Rhode Island, which not always known as the biggest lacrosse hotbed besides you and the great Colin Briggs. So just I want to hear your journey to start lacrosse, play lacrosse, Rhode Island, and then how did you get to Virginia? The question I've asked Coach Starja and Coach Myers, like, hey, when was the first time you kind of fell in love with the University of Virginia and the University of Virginia lacrosse? And just curious what resonates with you. What's that moment that you kind of realized that this was the place you wanted to be, which ultimately has made such an impact on your life?
Yeah, absolutely. My introduction to lacrosse was around third grade, and my dad played lacrosse. And he kind of gave me my first stick around third grade. I did a mini lacrosse program, which was like a clinic. And I remember one of the first times I got hit. It was like a ground ball, and an old friend, a guy named Mike Gilbane, was also out there, and Mike like hit me on the ground. That was the first time. That was like my first experience to lacrosse. But as a young kid, I was playing all these other sports. I was playing soccer, I was playing baseball, I was playing tennis, really active. But lacrosse wasn't a sport that was at the school I went to. And then when in the third grade, I went to a new school that actually had lacrosse, and it had a middle school lacrosse team and it had a high school lacrosse team. And that was the thing to do. That was called the Wheeler School in Providence, Rhode Island. And literally at recess, we'd all bring our lacrosse sticks to school. And at recess, we'd go out and we'd play in the schoolyard and we'd make up little tennis ball lacrosse games. And that was how I really started playing lacrosse. I didn't play on my first lacrosse team until sixth grade. And that was the middle school team at Wheeler. I really loved the game. And, that was when I kind of stopped playing baseball. I played baseball up through majors. And there was one year where I was doing lacrosse and baseball, and then I stopped baseball. I'd been playing a ton of tennis before then. And I didn't stop playing tennis, but, lacrosse became kind of my favorite thing to do. So I went to camps, and I just practiced a lot. For me, it was like something about it was therapeutic, I think, going out in the backyard and throwing the ball against the wall or shooting on goal. I just love to do. And
Yeah.
so I spent a lot of time doing that. So my connection to UVA, I guess, started with my dad and Dom Starja. So my dad and Dom happened to go to Brown at the same time. My dad
Okay.
played
Yeah.
lacrosse and hockey at Brown. He played 1 year of lacrosse, and then he played 4 years of hockey. So him and Dom overlapped a little bit at Brown. So they knew each other. And then Dom's daughters are special needs. My
Yeah.
brother is also special needs.
Yeah.
And so they happened to go to school together in Rumford, Rhode Island, where I grew
Yeah.
up. And so our families had that sort of interaction. I didn't really know Dom personally, but our parents knew each other and had kids, both special needs, going to the same school. And so we had an interesting family connection, which was certainly part of, I think, my connection to Dom and things that came later. But it was the Final Four in I want to say 94, when I
Yeah.
first saw Virginia play live. And I went down to the Final Four because I was a ball boy at Brown University,
Mm-hmm.
and Brown made the Final Four.
Yeah.
And so we traveled down to cheer for Brown. And I happened to be and so the semifinals that year were Syracuse versus Virginia, and then
Mm-hmm.
Brown versus Princeton.
Yeah.
And that was the great Virginia Syracuse game when
Yeah.
Michael Watson was a freshman and scored the game winner in overtime. And Virginia was down, like, I think it was 6 or 7 goals, and they came all the way back and they win in overtime. And it was the greatest lacrosse game I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
And at that moment, I decided I wanted to play college lacrosse. And I think
Yeah.
also at that moment, I decided I was a Virginia lacrosse fan.
Yeah.
And
Right thing.
but I never really thought I would be good enough to play at Virginia. I didn't have high expectations. I had no idea how good I was coming from Rhode Island. And and then Dom came up to me at a recruiting camp, I think my junior year, or something thereabouts. And he came right up to me after I played a game. He said, "Chris Rotelli, like, I'm Dom Starger. We've been watching you. We'd love to talk to you about coming to the University of Virginia."
Yeah.
And I was blown away. And and then on the first day you could receive letters, September 1st or whatever it was, got a letter from Virginia. And I remember the V lacrosse on
Yeah.
the letterhead. And that was
Yeah.
it. From
Yeah.
that moment on, I was like, that's where I want to go. And
Yeah.
I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. I think that this director of the Virginia Lacrosse Network role that I'm taking on right now is just the coolest job ever because one, I'm talking to really good people like you, but just being able to connect these dots of Virginia lacrosse, and there's so many, through the best, like lacrosse, like it's such a tight knit crew. Somehow, some way, there's an intersection that triggered you to go in this direction, that direction, and to hear your connection through Brown and Dom and your dad and Providence is just fascinating. The fact that lacrosse it all connects and then it brings you on this amazing journey. With that being said, I think like looking at your resume, like lacrosse resume is pretty absurd. Like it's literally like I know your opening line is like one of the most heralded lacrosse players ever, which is obviously very true. And I know you well enough to know that you're gonna shake this off. But like when you read your resume, like to yourself, or when you see that, based off of what you just said, where you came from as a third grader playing lacrosse and loving this and never knowing, like how do you kind of like look back on this continued unbelievable run you've had with lacrosse? Like, can you justify that? How do you kind of assess that absurdness of this journey
Oh
you're on?
man. Well, I read it to myself every day, every night before bed, Wyatt. I read it all out and it helps me sleep.
Yeah, in
No,
front of the mirror doing
I do.
push-ups.
I mean, when I look at all of that, it is a little hard to believe because I'm old enough now. I'm 44. I have an 8-year-old son. I see him
Yeah,
playing lacrosse. I help kids get recruited to college, and I coach a lot of youth and high school players. And I just know how hard it is to do those things. And I think, I got very lucky to be surrounded by so many great people, so many great players, so many great coaches at a period of time when the stars kind of aligned. And it's funny, like I was never focused on any of those things as a goal. And our focus, like my focus when I got to Virginia, was like getting on the field. Like
yep,
that was like the extent of what I was thinking about. Of course I wanted to be the best player I could, but it was more about how do I get on the field and help the team. And like every year it was more about, how do we win? And then, we went to 3 Final Fours and we
yep,
lost 2 of them by a goal. One in double overtime my junior year.
yep,
And the focus for me and our team was always about like how do we win a national championship and how do we be the best, and especially that last year. And I think like so many of those awards came in that last year, and so
yeah,
that just like those, like I don't even really treat them like individual awards. I know it sounds like a little cliche, but like they truly are like, is symbolic of what our team did and like the great senior class that the '03 class, my team, my classmates and I did. Like that came from losing 2 Final Fours and
yep,
having
yep.
a pretty bad sophomore year. Like this drive and like competitiveness and confidence, and the fact that like we all really liked each other. We just had a great team dynamic. And I think like the coaches we had just did an amazing job. I'm a coach now, and trying to like put myself in their shoes about how they sort of like how they corralled that group of 45 guys and got everybody like focused on this goal that we ended up achieving was remarkable. But yeah, like the individual awards, like ACC Athlete of the Year, like Tewaaraton Award, like I think I worked extremely hard. And it was Dom used to say like Chris had like an engine that burned white hot, and I truly did. And it was this crazy, I think, competitiveness and ability to work really hard. And for some reason I could run fast and not really get tired. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I get tired
Yeah.
now, but I don't know, man. I just feel really, really blessed to have been a part of all those people and like, being surrounded by such great players, and coaches. I think I just got very lucky and, was able to work really hard.
Yeah. So I'm still kind of going over surface level everything stuff, and then do want to keep diving the weeds about pretty much everything we started with. But I want to hear your thoughts about, so when you hear Virginia lacrosse now, it's April of 2025, which is just hard to believe in general. But April of 2025, UVA over the past 25 years is statistically the most dominant college lacrosse program in the country, almost by far. Historically, it's a top 3 to 5 lacrosse program based off of how much we've done and accomplished in 25, 30 years. But from where you left UVA as a student athlete, right? Like UVA, just for instance, like I picked up UVA lacrosse in 2006, undefeated season down in Florida. I saw it. That team was the best, regarded as best team ever. That's when my light bulb was like, oh my gosh, college lacrosse, me, UVA. But by that time, it was already UVA lacrosse. It was 1999. You guys won in 03. They won in 06. So like it was UVA lacrosse. And now it's doubled down. I had a title, 2 more titles have been added. So like that legacy has been built. Seems like you were on that, that first half, or maybe transitioning to that second half of what UVA lacrosse is known today. Can you kind of talk about how that viewpoint, like, the idea that you weren't the UVA lacrosse that everyone knows now, and you having to kind of fight to potentially, like, it seems like, be what UVA lacrosse is now in terms of that type of gravitas and accolades and that type of program. Does that make any sense? Like, can you kind of
Yeah.
understand?
I mean, it's interesting because the first national championship they won was 1999, which was my senior year in high school.
Yeah.
And so I'd already committed to Virginia. They hadn't won. They'd been really close. They'd lost heartbreaking overtime games in the championship. They could never quite get over that hump. And then they win in 99. I was at the game sitting next to Andrew Ferrone, who was my freshman year roommate the following year. So it was incredible to see. And then, I think the expectation when you go to Virginia, especially given the success that they'd had, is that like you're gonna win one, right? And
Yeah.
my 4 years were, we lost in the semifinals by a goal. We lost in the first round my sophomore year. We lost in double overtime in the semifinals my junior year, and then we won my senior year. And so the you know, we were always in the hunt and competing for a national championship. I think what's different today is there's just a lot more teams that are in the hunt and
Yeah.
competing for a national championship. Like in my era, 20, 25 years ago, it
Yeah.
was there weren't I don't think there were 10 teams that could win the national championship. There might have been six
Yeah.
realistically, or maybe eight, the quarterfinals and on. And now it might be 16. It's probably double that now,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
have just twice as many teams that are good enough on any given day to kind of beat any team. So
Yeah.
the game has grown a lot. And I think it's much more exciting. It's also, I think, much harder to do what we
Yeah.
used to do, which is basically go to the Final Four every single year.
Yeah. And let's run maybe 1 or 2 more bigger picture questions for you, but let's run with that theme of grow the game. It's one that you kind of, I know you represent in everything you're doing. It's also something you always talk about, growing the game. You've seen the game grow throughout your own journey, and now, being in California on the West, and now it's booming. So just, curious your thoughts about the growth of the game of lacrosse. I think it's in a pretty interesting spot. You have the Olympics coming up, the PLL is doing well. College lacrosse is kind of in this weird spot with all the college athletic moving pieces, but then high school ballooning. And I know my little journey, my nephew lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. I was up there a few weeks ago and saw a youth practice in outside of Raleigh, North Carolina, and there was 12 fields packed
Yeah.
with kids playing lacrosse. He's a first grader, and it was the most well-run, organized lacrosse clinic I'd ever seen. I said, if this is happening in Cary, North Carolina. Can you imagine the future of lacrosse? But it is in a interesting spot with so many moving pieces. So just curious, like hard question to answer, but when you hear kind of growth of the game, growing the game of lacrosse, like what comes to mind? What are the things that excite you and the things that maybe kind of you're worried about as you see this thing keep going?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited. I mean, the game is in a good place and it's bigger than it ever has been. I think it's really grown most at the top level. Like there's more elite, really good players than there ever has been. And there's more of those players from new markets, like emerging
Yeah,
markets. So more there are better lacrosse players coming out of the West than there ever have been. Same goes for the South and different, there continues to be the hotbeds, which are still the hotbeds, New York,
yeah,
Maryland, New England, Philadelphia. But in those other places, there's more good players than there ever has been. I think on the youngest level, like the rec level, like the entry level, it's in an interesting place because it's not growing as fast as it was before. It's kind of a hard game to say yes to because it requires somebody coaching it who knows what they're doing. It requires a parent to buy equipment and kind of know what they're doing. And then it's still, kind of competing with the sports that are presented to you in most places as you grow up, like the easier
yeah,
sports to play, like soccer and basketball and flag football and baseball. And so it hasn't, I don't think it's really taken off at the entry level yet,
yeah,
which is exciting because I that still can happen. It's kind of a confusing and maybe intimidating game for some parents to dive into, especially if you're not from the East Coast, where it's still pretty local. For the roadmap for a player from the West still requires, if you want to play college lacrosse, you're going to be traveling to the East Coast a lot
yeah,
to
yeah,
play in front of college coaches and to play the teams from the hotbeds. And so not all families want to do that. And so for that reason, a lot of people don't sign up. They will play a different sport. And I think that what will change that is if we could ever get Division I programs in the West. If the path to get to college didn't have to go to the East Coast, both to get recruited and then ultimately
yeah,
go to college, you're going to open up so many more families that are now interested in participating, because maybe like a lot of people from the West or the South, they don't want to go to college in the East. Like none of their
yeah,
friends are going to go there. And so if we can, and you see what it's done to the girls game, the girls game is great. And if there are what, 3 Division I programs just in Northern California alone. So, that would be a game changer. And so if you say, what am I concerned about? I think I am concerned a little bit on the college side of things and what's going to happen with the trickle down effect from this forthcoming like house settlement, and how are programs funded, and are they going to continue to be sustainable, and can the game grow at the college level, because it currently really isn't.
yeah.
And I'd love to see the growth of the game at the college level come out west. And I think that in a weird way helps the entry level.
Yeah. And speaking of coaching, I do want to just give you the mic, and I'm going to go see Coach Van Arsdale and Coach Starja next weekend in Charlottesville. We're doing the Coach Van Day, and Coach Dom's going to say hi, introduce him in recognition of everything Coach Van has done. But two people that I know have meant a massive amount to you, two guys that have grown the game in so many ways. So I just wanted as now you've coached for so long, I want to hear what you think about when I say Coach Tarja and Coach Van Arsdale. What have they meant to you? What are the biggest takeaways that you've taken away from them that you've kind of used in your daily life, let alone as a coach at a high level?
Well, I mean, they were everything for me, Coach Van and Coach Dom. Like, they just the simple fact that they believed in me enough to recruit me to Virginia changed my life. And then the fact that they believed in me enough to put me on the field and give me a chance. I think they saw something in me, and they knew how to take it out. They bring it out of me, and I didn't even know it was there. Like Dom and Coach Van, I think they had a way of they show you the right path to take, but they ultimately make you take it. They're
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
micromanaging and joysticking you. It's like they're guiding you.
Yeah.
But as a man, you need to make good decisions and do what they're telling you to do. And I'm really I think I was coachable, like, and so I was able to absorb that and kind of follow their direction. But everything they were pointing me towards individually and us towards collectively was the right way to go.
Yeah.
And and we got there, eventually. And I coach every single day, and at some point during that day, I'm probably saying something that I heard from Dom and Coach Fan or sounding like them. And it's funny, I've seen so many of us Virginia lacrosse alums, like when coaching, like, turn on the Dom voice
Yeah.
and start
Yeah.
sounding like
Yeah.
Dom. Nobody who does it better than Joe Thompson.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we all know. But so, and the thing that Dom always talks about nowadays that you don't really I don't think you get until you're older is he says it's all about the relationships. When you're a young 20-year-old kid
Yeah.
in it, you don't really understand that. But 20 years later and reflecting on all the amazing relationships that we all have together as Virginia lacrosse alumni, both the people on the teams I was on and others like yourself, like we
Yeah.
didn't play together, but we have a great relationship. And this game has an amazing way of when you play it, it kind of gets in your blood and it stays with you. And as Dom has always said, if you're good to it, it will be good to you. And that is, I think, the spiritual nature of lacrosse, which has been so good to me. And I learned that from Dom. And so, like, that is like one of these things that he's just constantly talking about, and it really starts to hit home as you get older. And again, I just feel so lucky to have had those guys in my life, and I'll include Chris Colback and Tucker Radebaugh, who coached me, when I was a freshman at Virginia as well, because it's really and Dave Curry, who was the assistant with Coach Van my junior and senior year, and Hannon Wright, and
Yeah.
all the different guys that were around the program. So just like really feel so grateful and blessed to have been coached by all those guys.
Yeah, and it seems like what you're talking about is they give you a path, and they hope that a lot of that comes together at the right time at the right place. And just getting into the weeds a little bit about the 2003 season, which is a year where so many boxes are checked off, and you don't see that often in terms of player accolades, team accolades, championship coaches. Like, it seemed like '03 was obviously a pretty special year. And I've had the honor of having Coach Starja talk to some teams that I've worked with over the years, and from Harlem to University of Kentucky to now in Florida. And he always somehow, some way brings up your name, and he says, "Listen, it's not a surprise that the best player on our team in 2003 was also the hardest worker on our team. He was and you brought it up earlier. You had at the time didn't ever run out of gas. And he said you were the first guy in every single sprint every day the entire year. And so it seemed like all that came together for you and the team. And just wanted you to put on your student athlete hat, but also looking back now on your coaching hat as people listen to this podcast and want to produce great teams and great individuals, whether it's in lacrosse or in the boardroom, wherever it is. So what to you was that secret sauce of that 2003 year, which is one of the greatest kind of collective years in kind of modern college lacrosse history, with all the good stuff that came together? What comes to mind for you?
Great question. It's a couple things. First and foremost, it was hard work. We tried to outwork every team in the country. Truly tried to be the hardest working team. So I didn't get tired, and I
Yep.
didn't really get tired, but that was because I killed myself running sprints. I remember
Yep.
we would have lifts every 3 days a week, and I would finish my lifting program and I'd hop on the treadmill and I'd sprint a mile. And it was like it was trying to get extra work in wherever you could.
Yep.
I remember, I still early in the spring season, the senior class, the '03 class, collectively we decided we were going to come back to school early in January and we're going to work out. And I remember running sprints with our class And it was like all 10 of us running sprints on the old turf field. Um, and like that set the tone for the rest of the year. And that sort of like was like, that came from, quite honestly, losing in double overtime to
Yep.
Syracuse the year before. That was so
Yep.
painful. And then we came back and we created this like sort of like a motto for our team was whatever it takes. And
Yep.
whatever it takes became we will work as hard as we need to work to win our last game.
Yep.
And so that was this contagious thing that we all sort of like were pushing each other to see who could work harder, who could run sprints faster, who could practice harder, and all these little things. And it like became this awesome, um I don't know, it created just an amazing team. And I think like work like that, like when your seniors are leading in that way, it's very contagious. We had amazing underclassmen on the team. I mean,
Yep.
Kyle
Yep.
Dixon was a
Yep.
freshman, Matt Ward was a freshman, Matt Bosque,
Yeah. Yeah. Insane
like
talent.
Brett
Yep.
Hughes was on the team, like Tillman Johnson. We had a loaded roster, but Johnny Christmas, Joe Yavoli. But we like it was definitely like led by the senior class and the work ethic. And I'll even go back like further, and I think that came from the story that you heard about the 99 team and
Yep.
Tucker Radaba and the 99 class and how hard they all worked. That those were the recruiting letters we all got when we were recruited to Virginia.
Yep.
They
Yep.
won a national championship Tucker's senior year, and that was all credited to the work ethic and the sacrifices that they all made to get themselves over the hump.
Yep.
So like that for us was like, here's how you do it. And if you really want to do it, go do it. So we
Hmm.
kind of followed their
Yep.
lead and how they won a national championship in 99, which was really led by Tucker and Jalbert and McKnight and Curtis and Ragosa and guys like that. And then we tried to replicate it. So we worked extremely hard. We made sacrifices off the field. Like we were, you know across the 4 years at UVA, we weren't always saints, but that
Yep.
spring of 2003 we were.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that made a big difference too.
Yep. Yeah. It's funny just thinking about the Tuckers, the U's of the world. I know for me, it was Bray Malfris really kind of just said, we're not leaving this campus. We're not leaving Charlottesville without a championship ring. And I think sometimes it's one or two people that grab this thing and really drive it. And it's that 2003 team. What games come out? What games do you think about that really that you love looking back on and say, man, that was special? What looking back now, what were those games or those moments that to kind of bring out the nostalgia for all the guys that are going to be listening to this podcast?
I mean, I remember them all so clearly. It's incredible. Like, we our first game of the season, we won in the dome at Syracuse by a goal. John Christmas scored the game-winning goal with like less than a minute to go. I actually separated my shoulder the first play of that game and played the rest of the game with a separated shoulder. I couldn't practice the following week. I couldn't do contact. And I remember running around the field that following week at practice, just running laps around the field because I couldn't practice. I got taped up and was able to play in the game against Princeton at Princeton with a separated shoulder. And I had one of the best games I've ever played. I had 4 goals and an assist. We beat Princeton 9-7. And so like we started the season 2-0, beating Syracuse and then
Yeah.
Princeton, and that kind of sent us on our way. Middle of the season, we lost 2 games in a row. We lost to Johns Hopkins and we lost to
Mhm.
Maryland.
Mhm.
They were games we didn't feel like we played our best games. And then fast forward to the Final Four, and we're scheduled to play Maryland in the semifinals, and we blow them out,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
just killed them. And Matt Ward went off in that game. Tillman started one of the most remarkable like Final Four
Yeah.
performances of all time, and we killed him. And then we in the finals we played Johns Hopkins,
Mhm.
and I scored the first goal of the game and went absolutely crazy. I liked to
Mhm.
get really fired up after good
Yep.
things happened. And I remember celebrating with Billy Gladding and AJ Shannon and running off the field with those guys. and we just like kind of rode that wave, and we went up 5-0 in the game, and Tillman kept standing on his head, and they kind of chipped away a little bit. The game got close, and we ended up winning 9-7. So the only two games we lost all year were the two teams we beat in the
Yeah.
Final Four.
Yeah.
So it was incredibly special.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the great Dom Starja said, it is all about the relationships, and that's stands the test of time, and that's and the names that you are saying that you played with are pretty. It's a pretty insane group of people. It's literally like I mean, just insane, absolutely insane. And so, how have your relationships stand the test of time now? Looking back, obviously 20 years later from those games and that era, can you just talk about what those relationships mean to you, to those guys, now that you've been through that and now, obviously older and having families and, different lives? How do you stay connected to those guys and the relationships, and looking back on what a unbelievable journey you guys had and continue to have?
Yeah, no, they're the best and super like text message helps. Like I'm
Yeah,
on a text
yeah,
thread with the '03 team, with our
yeah.
class of '03, and it never seemingly never ends.
No,
And
no.
most of those guys are on the East Coast, so I'll
Yeah,
wake up in California 3 hours later,
yeah,
and
nice.
have 40 texts to catch up on. But that keeps us connected, and we love each other so much, so like that keeps going. And then even the older guys, Drew McKnight was like, I was stayed with Drew McKnight on my recruiting trip, and then he was a senior my freshman year in college, and
Mhm.
he's still, I talk to Drew all the time. He's a close friend, and
Yeah,
sort of, and people like that have just like that whole senior class. I mean, look at the senior class when I was a freshman. You had like Jay Jalbert and Peter Agosa, Ryan Curtis, Drew McKnight. Um, it was, and they're all great guys that I'm still in touch with. And, so we, you probably don't talk to everybody as much as you like to, but when you
yeah,
do, like, it's like no time has passed. Like
yeah, yeah,
I'll talk to Joe T on the phone, and catch up, and it's like no time has passed at all. So, anytime we can get together, it's the best. We had an amazing 20-year reunion a couple years ago down in Charlottesville. Most people
yeah,
got back, and I'm looking forward to many more. I wish I could get back more. Now I coach in the springtime in
yeah,
California, so it's really hard to get to Charlottesville on Saturdays. But we've got a couple big reunions coming up, I think, like our
yeah,
25th. So,
yeah,
but the relationships that you have with people in the program are amazing. I mean, I talked to Dom, like there was a while I was talking to Dom like on a weekly basis. Like we still stay in touch, talk
yeah,
to Coach Van all the time. So it's pretty incredible how this lacrosse, Virginia Lacrosse Network has sort of stayed together.
yeah.
And it's one of the best parts about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to. You brought up coaching, and I want to put your coaching hat on because I'm doing some high school coaching right now, and I think when I think about how grateful I am to be a part of Virginia Lacrosse, and then to have Harlem Lacrosse and that experience and all that lacrosse has brought to me, I kind of rewind and I'm like, well, I got here because I had great parents, and then I had really great teachers, and then great coaches, and I think those three buckets are so important. And I think good coaching is needed more than ever for the actual development of the game of lacrosse. Like you talked about, like we just need more coaches involved developing student athletes at a higher level. But we need more coaches that are just developing young men and women to kind of, as we know, use lacrosse as a tool to help people reach their potential, give them focus, give a direction. So I just want you to kind of put your coaching hat on now that you've been coaching for a while, and one, just talk about your enjoyment of coaching, what you get out of it, and what you're doing for coaching, but also maybe a plug for more people that would listen to this podcast. Hey, go volunteer, try, coach a clinic on the weekend, try to go help out. It's a huge time and energy commitment. Obviously, as you know, it's a whole
Yeah.
lifestyle. So, but I think if you can grow the game and give back, you should, is like, I think what I'm trying to get at. And through that, lacrosse in any capacity is really important, especially in this space that we're in right now, where we need people leaning into the sport, leaning into Virginia lacrosse. So all that being said, put your coaching hat on and kind of just catch us up on your coaching stuff, and then trying to get more people hopefully on a field with a whistle in their hand.
Yeah, well, we were talking earlier about the growth of the game. The game can only grow if people have a positive and fun lacrosse experience when they play. And so in order for that to happen, you need good coaches. And if your first experience with lacrosse is a bad coach who's kind of negative and not running an organized or productive practice, probably not going to stick with it very long. So the growth of the game is still related to people coaching it the right a good way, right? And I think that comes back to like, you know, you know, being like having a really positive and fun experience.
Yeah.
And for me and all the things we do, it's like focused on creating better lacrosse players and better people, and trying to make sure that like when you're coaching, you're not missing opportunities to teach things that will become life skills. It doesn't have to be like super, you don't have to hit the nail on the head, but like as a coach, you're if you're teaching them to work hard, that's going to apply somewhere else, right? So yeah, I think it's huge to get more people out there and doing it. It is probably it's one of those resources that holds the growth of the game back, because there just are only so many people that have the time to do it or are willing to do it. And if more people get involved at that level, it would definitely help.
Yeah. And where do you see your journey going out in California and the continued growth out in California? Obviously, it's so many athletes and so much opportunity out there. What's going on out west that you continue to see?
Yeah, the game's in a great place. Like there's better high school lacrosse out here than there ever has been. It tends to be more concentrated around certain high schools, but um like there are more good lacrosse players than there ever have been in California and the Pacific Northwest and places like Texas. And so I think it's extremely exciting. I'm also now coaching on the entry level. I have a 6-year-old
Yep.
daughter and an 8-year-old son.
Hmm. Yep.
And so I get to participate in that and get to see their journey and help wherever I can, which is extremely fun and rewarding. But as a parent of an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, I also see how like lacrosse really isn't a natural option for where
Yep.
they go to school. And
Yep.
so for more kids to play lacrosse at the youngest level, it takes a person like me or somebody that's going to be going out there and kind of recruiting these athletes into the
Yep.
game,
Yeah.
and then providing a good lacrosse experience, because it's not like a natural option for so many
Yep.
kids in places in California, just as an example. So having people that are willing to go out and kind of like get young kids playing is still critically important.
Yeah. And one area we touched on earlier that I'm curious how you look at it, because is the PLL, the Premier Lacrosse League, that's been growing and kind of relaunched and revamped and all sorts of stuff the last couple of years. And you're in kind of a few of those original MLL teams, and then the teams that were out west, and then came together, disbanded, came back. So you've seen kind of the ups and downs of the Pro Lacrosse League, and I'm curious how you view the league right now. And then obviously we can touch on next question, but just kind of like thinking, the league is really built, and now you've got sixes going on that's really going to be funneled into Olympics in 2028 out your way in LA. And so like there is this unique window for lacrosse to try to close some gaps and get some really
Yeah.
national worldwide recognition. It's in a different format in the sixes, which is a little, tough, but it's meant to be a least barrier of entry for programs from around the world. So just curious if you can start on your riff about the state of PLL and the Professional Lacrosse League. A lot of UVA guys playing, which is awesome. And then kind of thinking through like the path for lacrosse heading into the Olympics in 2028.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think Paul and Mike did a great job creating a better lacrosse league and doing a much better job marketing that league. And what they've done through social media and other aspects has brought a lot of positive attention to the game. So I really think they solved a lot of problems that we all like. I played in the MLL for 8 years, and like they really did, I think, improve areas that needed to be improved to market our game better. So that was a big step forward. And they've done it. I'd like to see the pro game on TV more.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we could get more people to go to pro games. I
Yeah.
think they still might have trouble getting a lot of more than 5,000 people to a game, which was sort of
Yeah.
always seemed like the cap for most MLL teams. You know, I think it'd be interesting to have the pro league in the springtime when the
Yeah.
college game's going on and try to
Yeah.
replicate like a football model where you got college on Saturday, pro on Sunday. The summertime is difficult for because the life of lacrosse players who are
Yeah.
really playing like in it that care a lot
Yeah.
they are super busy. They're playing in tournaments, they're traveling. Those things don't always like scheduling wise work to go to games. So
Yeah.
it'd be interesting to maybe try that on the pro side. But thinking about the Olympics, I think it's going to give great visibility to the game. I mean, it will, right? It's just like, I watched we were really into the Olympics last time and
Yeah.
like watching the gold zone and I thought the presentation of the Olympics this past time like on Peacock or NBC was awesome. And
Yeah.
like you think about lacrosse you know being presented that way, like it's going to be great for the game. And so hopefully that does give some good wind in the sails and help the growth. But the growth is like it's more about people having a great experience in it. Not
Yeah.
necessarily let's just grow and get bigger, but let's make sure that the game, like people are like this game is in a healthy place. And I think between what the PLL is doing and the lacrosse in the Olympics and really the new leadership at US Lacrosse,
Yeah.
things are going in a good direction. And some things take longer to, you know, to have an effect. But I do think like people kind of guiding the game forward are doing a good job and things are going in a good
Yeah.
direction.
A quick side note would be what are your thoughts about sixes? Are you teaching that out where you are now? Are you adding it into your world? Because it is
We
weird how it's like it's the pinnacle now of lacrosse in some ways, but it's
Yeah.
not being taught necessarily. So it's in this kind of weird spot. I'm just curious kind of how you're digesting it as kind of a bunch of coaches are going to be listening to this and thinking about what do you do with sixes?
We play it. I wouldn't say we teach it. We're not teaching the strategy of sixes, but we're playing small-sided games, whether it's 6-on-6 or 4-on-4, because I think playing smaller numbers, leads to more touches on the ball. And, you just sort of like, you can break the game down into little, two-man games and things like that a little easier. I love the fact that you're just running back and forth and it's kind of positionless.
Yeah.
I think the sixes format that the PLL rolled out was really fun to watch on TV, and I think that was the thing for the Olympics. It's like getting the games to be more condensed so they can
Yeah.
happen quicker,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't need as many people to play, so then you could get more countries involved that could compete. Um, but the game we play out in in California at the 10U level is like a sixes game
Yeah.
basically. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what they start with, and then from 12U and up, it's full field. So you're mostly training full field, not necessarily full field, but playing like normal traditional lacrosse
Yeah.
field lacrosse rules.
Yeah. Let me ask you two maybe more specific questions. So I know I'm gonna copy and paste this link once I get it edited and cleaned up and send it to all my high school players and say, hey, whatever he's saying, you should listen to exactly what he's saying, kind of like you copy and pasted the 99 guys in '03. So from your assessment, coach, what if you're a high school player, maybe even a college player, and you're really looking to elevate your game and really looking to take your step to the next level, like what specifically should lacrosse players be doing on a daily basis to become the best version of themselves?
Probably three things. Um, Wall ball, right? With both, yeah, and become totally two-handed. So your stick skills you will only go as far as your stick skills will take you. So you
Yep.
need to be on the wall with both hands every day. Same goes for shooting on a goal. So wall ball, some kind of stick work and shooting are kind of mandatory work. And I think in this
Yep.
day and age, if you want to play offense, you need to be almost completely two-handed, which
Yep.
was not the case when I played. I was not completely two-handed.
Yep.
But I
Yeah.
think in today's game, like you really do need to have two hands. And it's athleticism. Like whatever you can do to become the fastest, strongest athlete, you should be doing.
Yep.
Because if you want to play Division I lacrosse, and Dom would always say this, and it always resonated with me. So I'll just repeat what he said. When he would talk to parents about recruiting, he would say, if you want to know if your son is a Division I lacrosse player, ask yourself this one question: is he the best athlete at his high school?
Mm.
And if he is one of the best athletes at his high school,
Yep.
then maybe
Yep.
he will be good enough to get recruited by a team like Virginia. But
Yep.
if he's not, he might not be actually a Division I
Mm.
lacrosse player. That's the kind of athlete they're looking for. So, and that is very true today too. So it's, really you got to be the best athlete and best player you can be, and those are the things you got to do to get there.
Yep. And just to segue quickly, because I'm interested in your thoughts, because like I said, I'm coaching high school. I think it's never been hard to get recruited for a lot of reasons. And talking to parents and being like, hey, this is like kids coming up to me be like, hey, I want to play divisional lacrosse. I'm like, okay, I'm all in. I'm gonna do whatever I can. But you're talking about doing one of the hardest things possible, which is just play divisional lacrosse. Play Division I sports,
Yeah.
let alone lacrosse. And it's gotten so much talent going to so few schools in college. Kind of what we talked about earlier. That kind of stuck with the college growth. So what would be your advice if you're a kid listening, or maybe even a parent listening? You're in this space a lot, trying to get kids to the next level playing college. Like what are you seeing of the things that need to be had? Obviously, right camps, right clinics. So like kind of just speak on that mindset, because it is really confusing and really hard and really competitive right now. And I know a lot of parents are kind of just stuck trying to figure this thing out.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with becoming that athlete and that player. So maximize your athleticism and your lacrosse skill. Like those are the things you can control. Get the best grades you can get. The better your grades, the more options you're going to have come college recruiting. But you got to get yourself onto a reputable club team that with a coach or a director that knows what he's doing. And you're going to have to go play games against the best teams in the country. If you want to like compete for like a Division I spot, then you're going to have to go play against the best club teams in the country
Yep.
in the summertime, in the fall time. And you're probably going to have to do that somewhere on the East Coast. And so you want to be on a team that's going to be able to go in that to that arena and have some success. And that's the one thing we've been really good at with the advanced teams and the NDP teams, especially, is like we're going back to the East Coast, and we're competing for championships at these tournaments. So the players are having success against the
Yep.
best teams from Maryland and New York and New England, and so and that matters a lot. I mean, that is the proving ground. If you
Yep.
want to be considered a top 300 lacrosse player in the country in your grade,
Yep.
then you got to go prove it against those known quantities. Um, from Baltimore, New York, and New England, etc.
Yep. Yep. And maybe one of the last things we'll touch on, kind of just rounding it back up to UVA and UVA lacrosse specifically. Obviously, this podcast was launched as the Virginia Lacrosse Network Podcast, which was this amazing opportunity for me selfishly just to interview people I look up to and think the world of on and off the field. And so you have, from my assessment, given just about everything you can and continue to give to the game of lacrosse, and it's given you so much in return. It seems like just a great wife and kids and a lifestyle, and also amazing accolades along the way. So I just want you to touch on the idea of, like, at the same time, based off of your accolades, based off of who you are and what you've accomplished, I feel like UVA is always asking you a lot in terms of getting involved and putting your name on stuff and financially making contributions. Can you come to this event? You and I were talking, you're like, hey, I could red eye here. I can come back. Like, you're always willing to give so much to UVA lacrosse. It's given you a lot, but it's always this continual, like, hey, every year we're asking a lot from our alumni, and people of your stature get asked probably even more. So I just want you to kind of touch on your kind of thoughts about the idea of continuing as alumni to lean in. I know personally, and because we're on a lot of these calls, it's never been more important to be an engaged alumni. You're seeing this game from a lot of angles, inside and out of UV lacrosse. So just wanted to give you the mic for a few minutes, just talking about what it means to you and why you continue to kind of just give everything you have to these programs, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much of what I do today came directly from Virginia Lacrosse. So I owe so much of my life to UVA and UVA lacrosse. So I'm very happy to give back wherever I can. And it does seem like in today's world, the way that college sports are going for non-revenue generating sports, to be successful, you really do need the contributions of people who care about the program and alumni. And so, um, I think we should all help in whatever way we can, and that's going to make it stronger. And if you just like, circle back to all these things we talked about on the podcast, like, um, it's this Virginia lacrosse mattered so much to me, and it matters so much to all of our alumni. And so being able to, give back and help, I think not only does it help strengthen the current teams, but it
Yeah.
really, in a lot of ways, it helps like, you know, protect all those great memories and relationships that we have, because the stronger Virginia lacrosse is, I think the more it will continue to matter to all of us. Not that anything we've done will go away, but there's nothing better than watching Virginia play on the weekend and seeing them
Yeah.
win games. And so if we can contribute and help in some way to that, kind of feels like you're still on the team a little bit and helping in some capacity. So, I'll continue to help in whatever way I can. And I think the alumni network that Drew Fox really helped create, that you're now, shepherding, is like such a valuable part of
Yeah.
what we offer at UVA as well. And being able to connect people across kind of generations and help our athletes come out of it with jobs. Like, I'm always, I love nothing more than to have somebody come out of Virginia and get them involved with advanced lacrosse in some
Yeah.
way. So,
Yeah.
I think all that stuff is part of it. And, whether it's alumni helping, you know, some young kids get jobs and get a head start, like, so many people helped me get a start in life and continue to help me every day. And so I just think it's great. Like, in whatever way we can help this network continue to be valuable and strong, we should all do.
Yeah. That's well said. I'd maybe finish with a couple things would be one, Virginia Lacrosse Network, I believe is how we originally met. And I don't know if you remember, but you flew out my little brother Griffin and we ran one of your Napa Valley
I do
lacrosse
remember. I do
camps,
remember
which
that.
was one of the best experiences of our lives. And I just graduated. I think you sent out a note saying, "Hey, we got this camp looking for alumni." And I reached out to you and said, because my brother at that time was living in Sacramento, my older brother.
That's
So my
right.
little brother and I flew out, and we had a week out there. And you had another camp, I think, somewhere else. So you were coming back and forth, and you pretty much gave Griffin and I the keys to the camp out in Napa Valley. And we had a car and a hotel, and I had just graduated. My little brother was at Salisbury playing for Coach Berkman, and we just had the best week ever. And you were the best, nicest guy, and
Uh,
flew us out and gave us the best trip. And then we went and hung out with my older brother for a week. So just to your point of like connecting dots, Virginia lacrosse, and throwing stuff out there and seeing what comes. That's how I got the Harlem lacrosse job. Was I sent my resume, Drew Fox put it out in the world. Someone came back to me and said, "Hey, there's this thing called Harlem lacrosse. You should reach out and find out." So that's why I've always leaned in, because I'm like, this thing has Virginia lacrosse, let alone this network, has everything in my life. Like, is now a direct correlation representation of
yeah.
being on the other side of Virginia lacrosse and UVA lacrosse. So, and then I would say, when I had this unbelievable opportunity to connect with Drew last year, and he was looking to kind of pass the baton, if you will. I said, well, what exactly, do I do, and what does Virginia Lacrosse Network do? And he had the best saying ever. He's like, our job is to make UVA lacrosse student athletes' dreams come true. And he said, there's one dream, and that's to go play lacrosse at University of Virginia. But inside of that, it's to get a degree from the University of Virginia, get your dream job from the University of Virginia, and leave with a big fat national championship ring on your finger. And I thought that was just the coolest thing. And I'm blessed to feel like I left with those three things. And I know you feel the same. And so just a continued shout out to Drew Fox, who made this happen, but Virginia lacrosse, and the opportunity to kind of live the dreamest of dreams of playing lacrosse at UVA, diploma, job, this network, and then hopefully a national championship ring. It's just as good as it gets.
That, that's the truth.
Yeah. Well, we'll call it a day there. I could talk to you all day, but it's just very special to reconnect to you. I'm very grateful for you, and just blown away at your generosity and love for the game and passion for the game, and can't wait to see you in person more, but I'll be holding it down in Seville for us and give Coach Van and Dom a big hug from everyone. But just want to say thank you for jumping on the podcast and for everything you do for Virginia Lacrosse and continue to do.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you so much, Wyatt. It's been great to be on. I really appreciate it. And yeah, good luck with everything. I'll see you soon.
Sounds good. Go Who's. Thank you, Chris.
All right, buddy. Bye.